subject, as you can see, is getting at the fine art and science of nearshore applications, services. And I guess the question you might be thinking, what does that mean? But we have a panel here representing both the user side as well as the supply side.
I'm Iris Trout, and I work for TD Bank, which is a Toronto bank, but I work for the US. I run their IT QA space. I have several years' experience in QA, and I've done both onshore, offshore, and nearshore global service provider work.
Me llamo Juan. Sorry. Notice nobody introduced themselves in Spanish here. So, John DeMasi. I've been in the quality assurance field for approximately 27 years. I'll go with a number. I'm currently at Liberty Mutual Insurance.
Hi everyone. My name is Alex Robio, and I'm the president and co-founder of Bellatrix Software. We're a nearshore vendor, originally from Argentina, but now with locations in Argentina, Peru, as well as here in the US.
Howdy, my name is Ed Schwartz. I'm VP of Engineering and a co-founder at Gorilla Logic. We're a software development company working in the enterprise mobile and web space, so we do a lot of delivery there.
Hi, I'm Patrick Miller. I'm currently the co-founder of a company called Formatically. Just started that recently, so a very recent startup, just got our first sale.
You know, we talk a lot about the nearshore as an alternative, right? And I'm just wondering, in your experience, what does that really mean in practice?
I think that being onshore or nearshore gives me the availability of test leads to be responsive. I have loads of project work that required someone to be there, usually during the East Coast hours, and I don't get that availability, obviously, from an offshore provider. So nearshore gives me that collaboration and availability that I can't get from someone from Asia, so to speak.
I mean, we've talked a lot today about the role of the nearshore development organizations, units, what have you. But in your experience, I mean, what are some of the obstacles and advantages inherently in actually making this work?
Some of the challenges that we face going to India and China always deal with the time zone. A lot of the Indian companies will accommodate you, and they'll come in late, and they'll stay late, and they'll try to overlap with you. What you find out is you're impacting their lives. Mm-hmm. They're staying up at night. They're not seeing their children during the week because they're at work until 8:30. They got into work at 10:30 in the morning, so that they maybe put the kid on the bus and that was it. I look at that challenge as a time zone issue, but it's also a social issue. When you're dealing with a nearshore option, that sort of pain in your own brain doesn't have to be there because you know that they're working on your time zone. They have similar hours to you, and you're not impacting their family lives.
In your case, Patrick, you have succeeded in bringing complex software development projects to Latin America, and I was just curious if you could share with us what are the keys to success in some of the work you've done.
I think the real key to success was maintaining a very open mind with regards to feedback from our partners. So knowing there are cultural differences, the time zone takes care of itself, which is fantastic. The technology can all be worked out as well. But listening to the partners and listening to their suggestions, we have our ideas for how to do something, but also listening to them with regards to what their feedback is. It's critical for identifying where the real issues are and then working on those together. So we tackled this in a number of ways. One very basic way was to have blended teams, for example. By having blended teams, we used agile methodologies, so by adhering to the core principles of Agile, by having the joint meetings, not only during execution of the sprint, but also during the planning, during the retrospective. All of those pieces formed very strong bonds and helped us surface what are the key issues. So it wasn't all about us saying, here are how we do things in the US and let's export that. It was about highlighting where there were weaknesses in our processes and collaboratively getting better.
I was just curious, how do you as a nearshore supplier pursue innovation and differentiation, given this broad palette of alternatives out there in the global delivery world?
Your vendors, your very well-established vendors that help you keep the lights on and keep your systems running and so on, but try to find other options for innovation, for creativity, for fast time to market, and that's definitely happening right now. The next frontier, really adding that additional value, and really providing that innovation, and complementing the Asian vendors as well. So in our case, we no longer say that we want to compete directly with India. That's not necessarily the case. We want to be a great complement to India. In our case in particular, one thing that frustrated us was, everyone can talk about innovation, but how do you prove and how do you actually make it a process? So what we did a couple of years ago is we started training our people on design thinking. It's a concept or a process created by IDEO, and it applies very well in software development. So if you guys haven't looked at it, I highly recommend it. It's a great complement to Agile. It's a great way of delivering value to customers and users.
You know, many companies are now looking at Nearshore as a way to succeed in these agile types of systems. And just curious, from a supplier's perspective, you know, how do you achieve success in working in blended teams?
We do most of our delivery with blended teams now with onshore and nearshore resources. Making software for a lot of user interaction and for a lot of web and mobile applications that we do, the timeframes for development are very short. Developing those projects with an agile methodology isn't only an engineering challenge. In fact, it's increasingly less an engineering challenge, and it's a collaborative social project. That requires not only the basics of communication, being in the same time zone, but fundamentally being on the same page socially is actually a pretty important piece of the puzzle as well. We don't really think we have onshore and offshore teams. We think we have one team. And if we feel like there's a distinction starting to get made, we try and swarm all over that. Otherwise, we're really looking for the best skill match, regardless of the location, that we look for innovation anywhere in the team for people that are ready to do it. In one project, somebody can be an innovator because it's something that they're passionate about. And another one, they're going to be a contributor. But it's really finding a place for everyone to contribute and starting to treat everyone on the team with the same kind of respect. We've seen that be tremendously powerful, just like you would expect or supposed to get from Agile, and we've been able to deliver successful projects in, you know, nice short time frames, 10 weeks, 8 weeks. So we really feel it's a great way to work, and Nearshore makes it possible.
One of the issues that comes up for us occasionally is that within the Nearshore you have a very large, I would say, either diaspora or people, say, for example, living in Haiti but who are Haitian but have an American passport and might do their high school in Haiti, elementary school, but will go to college at the University of Florida or NYU. A lot of times then they're looking to, say, go back home and work within their home country or the country that their parents are from. But what a lot will say is that if I stay in New York and work, and this goes back to what you were saying about blended companies, I will get a salary that is equivalent to my American passport. However, if I go back to Haiti and I am seen as any part being of Haitian origin, then I will immediately get a local salary. The general question, if there is diaspora and how those issues come about, or how you guys have dealt with it in your work.
I live in Massachusetts, right, just outside of Boston. There's a very large company in Rhode Island that expects the employees to take a hometown discount. They're 35 miles from Boston, but because you're in Rhode Island, they're expecting you to take a discount in salary. Those same people can go to Boston and get a 25%, 20% increase in salary. Many choose not to. They're from Rhode Island. It's a 5-mile commute to their home. They're happy where they are, but they have the option. And I would assume it's going to be the same for someone in that situation where they may want to live with their parents, they may want to take care of their parents, they may want to be part of that community, and at other times they might not. So I don't see that as a positive or a negative. I see it as an opportunity.
If you truly believe the world is flat, then you are also agreeing that the value of the work being done in the different locations is equivalent. So why would you not pay the same, right? And it becomes more of a sort of socio-political type values-based question than it is really anything else. What I can tell you is that just observably, rates are creeping up all around the world. So that flatness, I think, plays especially well in the software development space. It's also about life choices on the part of the person doing the work. There are often people who are very happy saying, yeah, you know, as long as you pay me competitively in a local market, this is actually where I want to be.
You know, how difficult are the communication challenges in Nearshore? Do they automatically vanish? And, you know, how does that compare to some of the experience you've had elsewhere?
I have to say that both nearshore, offshore, and onshore are challenges. I have had offshore testers who tell me they're on schedule, everything is fine, when that was not the case. I have had people in Mexico tell me everything is fine when I knew that was not the case. So I think it's really about culture and understanding the differences, but it's also embracing the differences. I think I've spent a lot of years trying to force somebody from India to be American or somebody from Mexico to understand what I was saying when they absolutely didn't understand what I was saying. It was absolutely entirely different from the way they're perceiving us. So I took an opportunity to jot down some differences, and I found that in Latin America, Americans are quickly viewed as very curt. We're very individualistic. We don't really care about our families. I mean, this is the perception that we're giving to Latin America. We want to get things done, but we don't bother building relationships. It's all about us. Whereas in Latin America, Americans might say, well, they really care about their fashion. They're a little slow to the upstart. Their handshake is not as firm as we would like. And crazy things that if you understand the differences, you really can embrace them and work with them rather than forcing people into a certain mold. I think that the 12 to 18 months that it took me to upstart an Asian company with us, and it took so long to get us to be in a groove, majority of it was me trying to force them to be just like us when they weren't. They were thousands of miles away from an entirely different place where family values were different, where work ethic was a little bit different. And once I embraced that and once I understood that, the work became so much more easy to do and we got things done. I would say for any successful engagement, be it nearshore, offshore, onshore, I would highly suggest really embracing the differences. Celebrate them. There's so many differences and it's so much fun to learn about them. There are holidays that you never heard of and different traditions that we would love to hear about and embrace. I actually bought myself a couple of nice outfits when I was in India last, and
There you go.
I loved it, so I would highly suggest that. So to your question, there really is much of a difference.
In our case, our company provides over 120 hours of corporate training per year, and a big chunk of that, about half of that, is actually English and communication training. And so it's not just English, it's actually a customized program that includes a lot of, how do Americans prefer to say things? Don't take it personal. That's, they go straight to the point. They don't mean to be personal. Things of that nature. So I think it's great that, when you have that awareness on both sides, I think it works very, very well.
Part of my introduction to going to India was to sit down with the team and talk to them about what I expected. I purposely do that because I don't want it to be misinterpreted. It doesn't mean that I won't have a long and pleasant conversation with you when you're face-to-face, but if we're having a business conversation and it's over email or it's over chat, I don't want it misinterpreted. And if you think I'm being difficult or don't read tone into my emails, please don't do that. I'm an engaging guy and we'll go out and have a great time when I'm there, but I don't want you to misinterpret.
So here's something about Latin America that I read that it's all about facial gestures and body gestures, and when you email, people can't really get the gist of it. They really want to see you face to face. So a lot of telecommunications is happening with us. We do a lot of that so they can see us because it's easier for them to see and understand what we're about rather than interpreting. So I can see where you might be getting some misinterpretation.
I started this a team back in 2008. It wasn't until late 2010 that we got desktop video conferencing. And I had a weekly video conference with QA leads from India, Ireland, China, and 6 locations in the US, all on a video chat. And everybody could see each other's face. And it built the relationships so much stronger in 6 months versus the prior 2 years.
Latin America itself is so diverse. When you look at the business culture in the different countries in Latin America, so diverse. Each country makes its own jokes about the others. You talk about being abrupt. Well, people might say, well, that's Argentina. You get on fine, right? You go to Lima in Peru, it's a much more formal business environment. Some countries are a little more culturally aligned with the US. Some projects that matters, some projects it doesn't matter as much, but it's interesting learning that sort of microstructure of the culture. And video conferencing is great if you speak with your hands,
Something you'd mentioned before, which is listening. That communication goes both ways. Got to do what you got to do to make your customer happy. And, you don't want to make it your customer's job to do a bunch of cultural adjustment. But inside of our organization and inside of the team, and certainly once you get engaged with the customer and you're working together potentially for months and months in a team, got to keep your ears open and find the communication going both ways. There's a tremendous amount to learn on both sides. There's a tremendous amount of broadening that comes with it, and that's the social aspect that you pick up as well as just an engineering side.
How do you make sure there's room at the table for the nearshore companies, right? When sometimes the vendor management and the procurement pressures are trying to favor the biggest, the biggest spend.
When I started up my operations, I talked to my leadership about we need to build scale. And I'm not sure how much scale we need, but we need more than one, which is what we have now. I didn't have the option at that time to go anywhere but India, so scale was going to come from India. As the operation grew and changed, we moved into other countries. And much to my chagrin, we moved farther east rather than south. The pain that it caused was immense. It's hard to do work 8.5 hours, time difference, into India. It's even harder to do it 13 hours into China. The sale to your management to pull it down to doing it in Guatemala, to doing it in Argentina, to doing it in Chile, to do it in any of the Latin American countries, I think is easy when you look at the wasted time trying to make it work, trying to force it to work in those other locations. So very simple business case and very simple time and dollars can be used to make that case that says, hey, there's a way to go about starting up in those countries. There's a way to then transition to your own situation if you want to own those resources. I think you just have to take the time to write it down.
From the vendor perspective, it can actually get a little bit frustrating because it's happened to us, especially in the past. The potential client would contact us, we go through the whole selection process, we'll be picked, and then procurement would say, oh, but these guys are not 10,000 seats, as they would call them, vendor, so we can't approve them. The great thing, though, is that more and more people, I think, are opening up to this idea of multimodal IT, and they're seeing the need for it. I mean, they can't find enough talent locally. They're also seeing really cool things happening in Latin America. We're getting a lot of traction in mobile payments, mobile banking, mobile-first technologies. There's a lot going on, and so people want to tap into that. And so now they're willing to spend more political capital in pushing smaller vendors through the door.
It's easy for people to throw stones about the political stability and all these. Sometimes they seem like canards, right? But I mean, you do hear it and escalating, current whatever. But it's a real challenge.
How do you guys compare Agile being done in Latin America with a bit big of a overlap in time zone, of course, and done with India? If you have that comparison out of the bat, can you?
We only worked with Nearshore, but we also had an office operating out of Poland. So different time zone there, Agile across there. Interestingly, also had quite a few Indian team members on our US team. So we had a lot of different commentary on what it was like and had some experience. We were able to do it with Europe by being very focused on that first couple of hours of the day. So making sure that we scheduled our meetings such that we could really hit each other with all the questions that we needed. But certainly with Nearshore, you really, provided you're comfortable with the communication technologies, you really don't have to do much modification in terms of the Agile methodology.
While my group didn't do any work in the Nearshore, our team was distributed around the US, and so we didn't have co-located Agile in any aspect, whether it was in Boston or it was Boston to Raleigh to Dallas, and then essentially to make it work with India, we moved product management to Ireland and had Ireland take the overlap with India. So we did significant amount of Agile between the US and Ireland as well. So you really need that 4 to 5 hours.
In a situation where you have a small overlap, a couple of hours, a lot of the things that make Agile flow start to not work because you've got a risk all of a sudden around those 2 hours. Whatever you got to get settled, it's got to get settled right now in those 2 hours. Now, if you need a couple of people to collaborate, wow, now it's really starting to get complicated because maybe they're not in the office at the same time, whatever it is. When everyone's in the same time zone and you have the right communication tools, then you're like, I don't know, let's ask Alex. There it is. Hi, Alex, what's up? And they're right on the screen. All of a sudden, they're in the room with you. It makes a big difference. The longer overlap that you can have, and certainly in the nearshore situation, tremendous advantage.
And one big additional thing that comes in with this very briefly is data, access to data. We had to think about that very hard because financial services. We didn't want to reveal data across company lines. We actually ended up creating a complete new data set so that and all of the developers ended up using that because it's a best practice. It was easy for us to get copies of our client database, of course, and test on it internally, but we found it was a better practice to create representative data sets, and that shone a light on some other things that we could be doing better as well as we went through that exercise. So data is a big piece of this as well.
You know, what do you guys see in the future from your own perspective, and where Nearshore will play as you move forward in the, you know, the global sourcing landscape?
What I'm thinking is that for my projects that are very volatile and high risk, that need immediate attention, always hands-on, that's where I need to be much more nearshore. Where I have repetitive kind of regression type testing and automation, that's easily done, you know, hours away, where someone just can continue to do that. So I think looking at the types of projects and the risk might make the decision for me.
Some of the things that we're seeing, some of the cloud technologies that we're seeing, and the virtual environments that we're seeing are going to eliminate some of the data challenges. I can tell you at one of the financial companies I was at, the entire 7,000 person remote workforce was put on virtual machines. They had a desktop in their office. They would log into the desktop and then log into their virtual machine. Everything was done remotely. Everything was done in the US. All the intellectual property was in the US. No code was remote. There were no printers. There was no ability to snapshot what was going on the screen. Everything was kept secure. I see lots of changes in our ability to do really complex and data-specific type work in those remote locations. It's so complex you can't create the data. You can't create those massive data sets in the web and spaghetti of the environments that they have to deliver solutions. So I think that ability to secure the code and the data from the actual solution delivery provider, I think is going to help drive innovation and really make us faster, better.
I think over time, the nearshore vendors have proven they can add value, so they're taking more and more of the management. But now it's going beyond that, and it's actually architecting solutions from the ground up, creating the feature sets, creating the experience, and actually adding that additional value. So I think that's a trend that's going to continue, and I think we're very well positioned because the culture in Latin America is very creative. People like taking a very active stance in their projects, not just taking orders, but actually being a very active participant. So I think that's where we're going.
I think that the difference between onshore, nearshore, and offshore is going to end up bimodal, but more under the covers when we think about it as a supplier and a vendor relationship. You're going to buy a solution. Your vendor's going to take care of that. And I can tell you that the vendors are going to be working with mixed teams, a lot of stuff in the same time zone because you get a lot of things done that way. Which time zone it is shouldn't necessarily be the customer's problem as long as they're getting the attention that they need at the price that they want. And I think a lot of the issues that we're talking about here are going to fold back into being methodology delivered issues. Customers are going to be spending less time managing vendors and more time just articulating what they want to get out of their products.
I think there's tremendous opportunity globally, and I think that pressure will be there. I hate to say it, but rates are probably going to go up, right? It's supply and demand, so basic economics applies. I think there'll be lots of opportunity for folks domestically, right? So if it's a fairly straightforward problem, I think that waterfall will continue to exist through our lifetimes, but on very large-scale projects, maybe. But then, yeah, the rapid iteration, the high innovation ones, I think that's just a real sweet spot for Nearshore. So now it's in the hands of the Nearshore folks to really crack that and deliver on the innovation, deliver on the skills so that we can rely on them as we go forward. But there's tremendous potential there.